Chris Jansen here, back with the End Evil podcast. I thought this week I've got a topic I've been thinking on for quite some time. It's been coming up in quite a few conversations with various folks, and that topic is AI and transhumanism. So tonight I'm going to give you some of my thoughts on these topics. But before we get started, I just wanted to remind you guys that evil is the destruction of freedom. This book is dedicated, this podcast is dedicated to the book, The End of All Evil. There it is. I actually got the real book, ordered from a gentleman I met online named Brendan. And if you wanted to order your copies of End Evil, the book, contact me or get on our Telegram chat, and I'll point you towards Brendan so you can order from him. And hopefully at some point we will have the book available on endevil.life as a staple. But right now, head on over to endevil.life and check out all the many episodes and interviews and presentations that have been created in the past years, and make a small donation. If you go to contact Chris, you can find my email. There's links for Bitcoin, PayPal, or there's a couple different ways you can send a donation. An awesome thing that some subscribers have done is put $1 a month towards the podcast. And I encourage you to help out, become part of the show. You can get on the show. You can communicate with me. We can set up an interview. You can submit images or video clips. And if they're appropriate to the topic matter, I'd love to share your work on the show. I'm always encouraging people. The main goal and idea behind the End Evil podcast is to encourage others to talk about, think about, and understand morality and spirituality in this world, and how we can work towards a better future, how we can leave a legacy for our grandchildren, instead of the path we're on, which is one of certain destruction of freedom. And that's happening in many ways. And one of the fears in many of our minds right now is the advent of AI. So I've talked in the past about the Borg. In terms of collectivism, they are a perfect example of, like in Star Trek, gives us this example of how things can go terribly wrong when we have like a whole race of beings that are half robot or more, and their minds are totally controlled by a central being, most likely non-human if we're going in the AI direction. And a scary thought of this future that we're considering as becoming reality. And as we'll discuss in this presentation, we can see that this quickly already is reality in so many ways. The AI future, we actually have robots being delivered to people's houses at this moment, and people driving around in vehicles that are virtually robots. And humans have already integrated with the cell phones. And as hard as that is to admit, we've already become cyborgs to some level, especially when you consider many people's addiction to the medical system. And they couldn't live without things like dialysis or heart meters or various types of electrical digital technology installed into the human body. Now, even replacing limbs, joints, some of these things, I'm not saying they're all 100% terrible and bad, but they kind of all come together with this scary future that is freaking people out. Now, I want to remind you that a lot of the images you're going to see today are images I've created using AI, and I am not by any means trying to tell you people that you should never use AI in any form, and that we shouldn't recognize the power that it has to help with our creativity and our building of the future. But if we don't recognize now the way things are going and where we stand, and use our good discernment, we will quickly become slaves to these robots, just like in the movies. The Terminator movie is a really good example, and or the Matrix, where in the future the robots have actually organized society in a way that's less chaotic, you could say. But humans are more like the batteries, more like the trapped souls in this matrix of electronics and metal. And this seems to be the direction our humanity going, which could be far worse than some of the dystopian futures folks imagine, because it happens so gradually and slowly. And we can see the cell phones are a perfect example of that. It starts out, oh, look at this cool new device. And then now, like, if you don't have that device, there's a lot of things in the world that you don't have access to. If you can't download an app at this point, you're going to have a hard time getting a driver license pretty soon. We're getting really close to that, but most of the modern services want you to go online, and mostly anything you purchase wants you to have some sort of application on your phone, scan a code and such, which is convenient, but it also kind of it's like a bait that drags us into using it and getting used to it being part of our daily lives, which is a dual-edged sword. As I said, I'm using AI to create these images, and I think that it's a great way to work on creating art and creating presentations. In fact, I would like to do a future episode showing folks how I do that, how I create presentations in a short amount of time, and how it's really helpful to use AI art. But the merging of AI and humans in society and in the world comes along with a lot of fears and concerns. We've got job displacement, people losing jobs, the concern that automation will go across various types of jobs and businesses, and unemployment and economic instability because of it. I can see that going both ways. There's also economical advantages that can be garnered. But one thing I've noticed in my lifetime, being a person who uses my hands with tools and construction work, is that more and more items, materials you get are kind of like modular, like things are pre-built. Whole houses you see being shipped down the road, eliminating the need for the craftsmanship. So through my career, I've had more and more to go to wealthier people and work in more custom type homes and situations, because there's less money and less need for someone that can just bang framing together and put on siding. Now robots can do that virtually. We're getting really close. Another big concern in the world is loss of privacy. We all know that on the internet space, you really have no privacy at this point. And anywhere you take your cell phone with you, which is virtually everywhere, no one, you or anyone around you, has any kind of modicum of privacy. Now, some people are working hard, I've seen in the freedom movement, to create different types of phones. I heard them talking about that in Freedom on the Rocks. And I know, like on my friend Shane's website, Liberty Under Attack, he does the Vanu podcast. There's some options on his website to get machines that have been created specifically to protect your privacy. But it's very technical work at this point to try to protect your privacy to any extent. It takes a lot of work on your part, and money and energy, and that's just going to get harder. So with that, we lose autonomy, and those in power, psychopaths or not, or AI at some point, has access to more control over critical choices in society and everyday things that we handle and do, down to fruit. I was trying to get the AI to draw an image of these robots bringing food to the humans. And I don't know, it just really didn't like that idea, and it wouldn't quite do it. But see, it's not quite following my orders here, you know. But with that, like what I was thinking about with these images too is the social isolation aspect. We've really seen this social isolation grow stronger since 2020 with the COVID. I remember in the 2-3 weeks following the lockdown that I did not obey, I'd be out driving around and going to work. Luckily, I was called necessary because I was building homes at the time, and we were able to keep working. And I had a boss who I was working for, a contractor who was also kind of like not into following rules, which I appreciated. But as you drove around, it was a literal ghost world. And I lived in a town that was normally thriving. 7 o'clock in the morning, if you waited till 7:30 or 8, like it would be 15 minutes different of a drive to go half an hour, would now take 45 minutes because there'd be so many cars on the road. And during the following 2-3 weeks when people were locked down, it was a literal ghost town. There was no one on the road, no one on the streets. And I remember driving up and down through neighborhoods and just thinking, all those people are inside of their homes. And that's just a taste of the future from my point of view of what could happen, of what potentially is on the way to happening. And it is a major concern of mine because people have become used to, especially in areas that are more densely packed and isolated in cities, a certain type of individual lifestyle that does not have any need or necessity for a community. And that has all through history been one of the things that ties humans together, that creates the good type of culture. I say that because in the book The End of All Evil, Jeremy Locke approaches culture as evil. And I think what he means by that is that we have created a culture of slavery because we've been allowing and being part of the slavery system for so long as beings, that most of our culture is built around slavery or in reaction to various forms of slavery. And that is why almost every type of culture that exists has some servile, lack of responsibility, appeal to authority involved in the cultural motifs that we've created as society, as people. But I think the more you go back into different times in history where people lived in more remote areas or more off the land, you'd see that working as groups and trading and having goods was a necessity. And it creates a certain strength in people, especially having shared history through values and through the sharing of mythical stories that help teach the young, and the sharing of realizations about where to find food, how to grow food, how to hunt, how to survive on the land. These things are more and more have been lost and are being lost completely on the modern generations. So this is encouragement to you to learn what you can and share what you can with your family and in your life, and work towards having whatever level of responsibility over your day-to-day needs that you possibly can. Now, most of us are alone to an extent, especially if you're kind of new to realizations about truth. And by that I mean our world is very much controlled by evildoers, and many people are still in a fantasy, kind of like not admitting that that's the case, or they don't want to see it for what it really is. They want to kind of stay in their own personal bubble. You can watch Netflix, movies, eat popcorn, go to work, and come home for many, many years and kind of just keep your eyes closed to the bigger picture of what's happening gradually and slowly, which is a degradation of humanity in all of its forms, from the workspace and the way we interact with one another. Just a common courtesy of humans come first before the screens, or humans come first before the things written on paperwork. But we live in a world where you can get put away for your entire life by words on a paper that may not even really apply to what you have or haven't done. And can you imagine how that's going to be when the administrators of justice are bots? And we're quickly getting there because people are already robot-like in their thinking. Take a trip to the DMV and try to explain your situation, and if you don't fit into their little boxes or their tax code or whatever, there's only so much arguing you can do. They just say, no, this is what you have to do. And you have little choice because at this point you're a puppet in this world. And, I think the story of Pinocchio trying to become a human is one that has intrigued me for many years, especially since my last trip to Disneyland, when really thinking about that story and how true it is. The temptation to go off into the fun world where they're smoking cigars and there's no responsibility. Meanwhile, you're losing the opportunity to be a real boy, and he winds up getting turned into a jackass, which is where many people are going in the modern world. We talked about recently with the One Great Work Warriors the violence of voting in the current system. It's a Punch and Judy show, and you are a puppet in this silly show. Punch and Judy, if you look it up, is a very old type of puppet show that it would just create laughter for people. Punch and Judy is like they'd hit each other and fight constantly and do stupid things back and forth because they're puppets, right? And it's funny to watch puppets acting out idiocy. But the truth is, it's a representation of the modern political scene where neither side really cares about your individual freedom or your community or the care for the legacy of future of humanity. Although they say they do ostensibly, their actions show in many ways that they don't, because they continue to murder, rape, kill, and do all the things that evil entails. So, you can completely ignore the Punch and Judy show. That's a simple thing you can do. Don't even get yourself involved with it. Why would you? We got better things to do. Look, we have a serious problem, and I describe it as the Pomeranian in the bag problem. We've been raised in a society that makes it really easy to find food, that makes it really easy to just live and survive without communing with other individuals, without coordinating complex plans, without thinking far into the future, without looking at the big picture. We're coddled in many ways. Like people get a little bit wet and then they get really upset, or a little bit cold, or a little bit too hot, and we had to turn up the temperature. We got to turn down the temperature. We need to get everything perfect. Oh, I got my fingers dirty. Whatever shall I do? I have germs on me, bacteria. This all comes from, like, if using crutches and never taking those crutches off, like your legs and bones won't heal properly, And that's kind of like the idea of these Pomeranians, is like people carrying around a dog in a purse. That little dog never really gets strong, robust legs because it's not running around on the ground and it's not interacting with nature. And so we're, as a race, very much that way, especially here in the States. A lot of people are circumventing the challenges of growing up and interacting with other human beings because they've been adopted by the state in so many ways, provided for with a paycheck every week, or a check to cover the food, and then the store has pre-made 90% of the food they're taking in. Their body gets out of control, and then they wind up in the medical system, which gives them a bunch of pills so they can feel okay. But really, they're isolated in their own body, like a robot in the Matrix, watching the Matrix's shows day in and day out, and kind of being subtly indoctrinated and prepared for the future that's surely coming, that's on top of us. So do you want to learn how to be programmed by the computers, or do you want to learn how to program the computers? That's why I do encourage people, this is a boiling crab situation or boiling frog situation. You boil crabs by putting them in the cool water, or the water they're used to, the normal temperature, and slowly turning up the heat little by little. This is what David Icke calls the totalitarian toe step, or what does he call it? Footstep, tiptoe. There you go. Totalitarian tiptoe. Like little by little implementing things. Like I said, we got used to the cell phones. We got used to talking to the AI and asking our computer questions, and little by little, pretty soon, a robot delivering your mail. It's showing up with a drone. Just people like, great, that's so convenient. Look how much this Amazon type style of delivering things to your house in the last 5 to 10 years has become ubiquitous, where it was rare, even that long ago. So we see these things changing. Many of these things we don't have a lot of control over. But do we want to actually get boiled in the sauce with all the other crabs? Or do we want to learn to be able to jump out of the pot as it's boiling? How do we have a foot in both worlds? It's certainly not easy. Like in the story of the Star Trek The Next Generation, we had one of the best characters was Beta, that the robot guy who was like able to always figure things out, and he could fight better than humans because he was faster, and like he was a great asset to their team. And then Geordi, I think, was the name of the guy with the visor. Here, a blind man can see. Not quite the same as a regular vision, but he had even some special things that other people couldn't see because he had his visor. I'm pretty sure there was a whole episode where he saved everybody's life because he had this, ability. And this is how the transhumanism and AI is sold to the public. And, like I said, there are aspects of this technology that we may see as advantageous. But if we go forward without morality and spirituality to even things out and kind of be able to discern, wait, could this harm others? And we just go forward as a race, as a culture, as a people, we're just getting boiled like crabs, because those who are in power, those who have authority, will always push this in the direction of works best for them. And that's what's not going to work best for the individual. I was always intrigued by Star Trek, the show, but looking back now, I can see how Star Trek was very much a propaganda show that was likely funded by some of the deeper state, dark occult entities, because what it has done is prepared our minds for this as a glorious future. The Star Trek crew is very much portrayed as heroes, kind of reminds me of people coming to this new country of America and discovering, the new world, right? And actually imprisoning and cutting the hands off the native people living here, rather than, well, some integrated. And, the whole Star Trek idea was that they could go travel around and discover and explore new worlds, but don't mess with it. Don't change their cultures. But of course, they did just the opposite. Kirk would show up and get it on with whatever woman looked good, and they'd get in fist fights with the locals and always totally change and affect the outcome of these people, and, impose their will and their own idea of morals, which was obviously corrupted because they're all living with this, right on their chest, the symbol of the, that has sort of become the symbol of the dark occultist. Wasn't originally the square and the triangle, the square and the compass of the stonemasons, of the Freemasons. I'm sorry. It's like a star, but it's actually the Freemason square, the compass, right? So it symbolizes their control, and it's very likely that partly that symbology was injected into this because of, like I said, who's funding this type of propaganda, is to prepare people for the future of AI, to prepare people for living in totally metal and glass with lights blinking, and see that all as good things. People living on life support, basically. And when you combine that with the future of the reality of like the Matrix, where you're probably not going to be on the star deck, you're going to be down in the engine room, probably hooked up to a computer yourself, like in the Matrix. So there's been a lot of thought programs out there to prepare us for this future, because it's natural for people to be somewhat afraid. AI is like, the guy in Star Trek, the Beta, like he's more strong than you are. He can think faster than you are. Long time ago, computers were really beating humans in chess, which is one of the most powerful ways we can test not just regular logical intelligence, but some intuition too. And there was a time when the computers could still be beaten by the human intelligence, and we're beyond that now. So we've already become dependent on this technology, and it creates this security risks, like all our money's tied up on digital forms. Our cars, our vehicles could be shut down from remotely or blown up. Who knows how these things are going to go. We don't really have control. We don't understand the ins and outs of all the technology we're using. We couldn't reproduce one of these phones or vehicles we're driving on our own, because it's very much out of our hands, or our small communities that we live in don't have the ability to manipulate the future the way that these massive corporations do in today's world, that can create technology, implement technology, and then put it out into the public and sell it, propagandize it in a way that it looks really fun and good. But who knows what's deeper in the programming, and what might emerge in the coming 5-10 years. We have to keep in mind that those who want to control will control. Those who want to own your time and energy will do that. So, there's a concentration of power in the world. And, this technology, those with the most money and those with the most power are going to be the first ones to figure out, how can we use this technology to manipulate people to do what we want them to do? Because that's always been the biggest issue, that people have this kind of problematic free will where they want to think for themselves. And I think this is, in terms of, we were talking recently, I've been seeing Nemo Jones from the Europa chat bringing up this discussion on different chats about what do we actually own in terms of property rights. And my personal thought on that is that our body, our skin, is the boundary of what we can provably own. And anything beyond our skin or our body is arguable in terms of 100% ownership. We can have things, we can claim ownership of things, and we can make a good argument for why something's ours and shouldn't be stolen by someone else in the physical world. But that all gets more of a gray area the less we own our own body. And the more that we become locked into some sort of hive mind consciousness and allow ourselves to be kind of hooked up and more regular with our time, more regular with our energy, connected to the thoughts of the hive mind. And what I mean by that is, the Overton window, the general view of the public is always being guided by massive amounts of money and think tanks. And their hope is that we are calm and docile, and that we live in our little cubicles and supply power and energy to the system, which supposedly protects us and keeps us alive. And it does, to an extent, because it needs our energy, it needs our power. And so if we allow ourselves to kind of acquiesce to this program, we become just little glitches in the matrix, and we lose our personality, we lose our humanity, and we lose our ability to say no more and more, because it's getting harder and harder to decipher what's real. And the danger of the bots becomes more and more apparent as they strap more weaponry on them little by little. It's going to start with robot dogs like we saw, and little drones flying around in 2020, and maybe just in China and certain places in Pakistan or whatever. But the next time they come around with something like this, we're going to see them in all the major cities, robot dogs and drones. And then this Terminator guy, I'm sure he'll come along a few years later when it's time to really create the family of Borg, right? So this is like going to be your family photo in 10 years. Hopefully a little less blurry with your high-tech Ultra 8K camera that's going to be implanted into your right eye or your left eye. And we can go around zapping one another when people don't do things right. We can just make them do things the way we want them by force. And that's the idea of the globalists. That's the idea of the hive mind. And that's the idea of people when they support government and they say that's what order is. This is the order of your future. Getting sucked into this giant cube of metal and glass, being imprisoned in your own home, and not having like artistic expression, not even being able to reach that aspect of your being. So how do we fight this? You know, Sarah Connor's the good symbol of the feminine aspect that still cares about humanity, that cares about the future. And so we all need to ignite the Sarah Connor aspect of our personality and realize that we do have to fight for our autonomy in many ways. We have to claim it. Some of these simple things like exercising your body, exposing your body to cold and hot, running, jogging, spending time with other human beings, discussing things, stretching our mind, reading old books, you know, continuing to look towards the future and ask ourselves, where are we going? What am I doing with my time? What do I want to be doing with my time in the next 5-10 years? Who do I spend my time with? Do I spend my time arguing with chatbots on the internet that might not even be real humans? Or do I actually engage other intelligent human beings in discussions that are getting somewhere, that are working towards solutions that are complementing one another's thoughts and ideas? So I challenge you as people to work on self-defense. How would you defend yourself if you were being chased down by a bot or a robot? I mean, that sounds a little ridiculous, but that's the future, like Sarah Connor is talking about, that we have to little by little begin to prepare for and to think about. And a lot of that right now is in theory, like we're preparing our minds spiritually and mentally, but it's also becoming more physical. How are we going to defend ourselves when we lose the control that we see fading around us of our own personal choices? And a lot of that is just being more responsible and taking responsibility for whatever we can, whether it's food, water, where we live, where we travel. As much as you can become conscious and make decisions and learn to cooperate and coordinate with 1, 2, 3 other people that you can really trust, that you share principles with, the better chance we have to create some sort of resistance for the future and some sort of safe place for people to go. So all that being said, I really want to thank you folks for coming to the End Evil podcast, and head over to endevil.life, and you can also check out chrisjansen.com. I would really appreciate sharing the show. Check out YouTube. We're getting real close to I think I'm just about to reach 700 subscribers. So if you haven't subscribed yet on the YouTube channel, do that. You can check out my tap link. It's generally in the comments of all these. We're on Rumble now. Starting a Patreon soon. I have a lot of exciting announcements coming up soon, but they're all kind of in gestation, growing from the egg period right now. Not quite ready to announce the big stuff, but I'm working on a short, how could you call it? It's like a very short movie, animated movie, and it's a fictional story that is meant to teach deeper concepts, and it's kind of what this presentation is based on, AI and transhumanism. And then we're starting to talks about Funnel 4 coming together in February. We're looking towards right now, and that'll be announced soon, assuming everything goes as planned. And One Great Work Warriors are going to keep having a video for you. We got some topic ideas for the next 2 months, so looking forward to sharing those with you folks. interview with Nate Cap. If you guys haven't seen Nate Cap's Earth Brain 3, I highly recommend to check that out at cubbyhole.com. Always try to send people over to whatonearthishappening.com. Mark Passio's How to Become the True Media course is a terrific way to learn some of these skills to present. And that's one of the things we can do in this world right now is spread information, talk about ideas and tactics. They haven't completely clamped down on our ability to speak out, so let's do it while we can. We need more of you in that fight. More Sarah Connor attitudes out there. And our bazooka right now is our voice. And so that's what I'm encouraging you to share. And this podcast might be a way for you to share your voice, connect with me. You can find my email address, like I said, on andevil.life or chrisjansen.com. And make a difference. You know, we don't want to see our grandchildren imprisoned by the bots or the dark occultists or the AI hive mind. So we got to do something about that. And right now, the best thing to do about that is work on your personal responsibility and then speak out about the importance of spirituality, the difference between right and wrong. And natural law is ultimately the understanding that will help us understand and discern when things are right or wrong. Because then we can kind of see the trajectory of things and understand why a thing is wrong from a base hermetic level. Anyway, there's a lot of discussion on that. If you look on past episodes, What is Natural Law with the One Great Work Warriors, I highly recommend. And with that, evil is the destruction of freedom. And I'll see you next week. Thanks for coming.